Hello there guys, and welcome to another video. This is a Gigabyte GA-6WMMC7 motherboard that has been discovered in my parents' attic collecting dust. This is all that remains of the family workhorse, a machine that had been shared between myself and my three younger siblings until I built my own system. This machine was then known as the Celerbanger, as it was a bit of an old banger compared to my new rig. In this video we're going to be exploring this special attic find, and hopefully we'll be able to run a Dosbench. Located in the CPU socket is an Intel Celeron CPU clocked at 500Mhz, which had been operational up until it ended its life, where it had been sent to reside in the attic. The board has all of the essentials integrated: PS2, USB, serial, VGA, audio, joystick and LPT ports. The VGA connector had previously been replaced by my good old father, as the original had generated a dry joint and was no longer making a connection. I have no recollection as to where the rest of this machine had disappeared to, but it originally shipped with 64MB of RAM, a 10.2GB Fujitsu ID hard drive, an AMR 56K modem and a BTC DVD drive. Let's have a closer look at the CPU. This will be the first time that the CPU cooler has been removed, as this machine was purchased new from a company called Staples, which sells PC and office equipment in the UK. Now, that is a surprising discovery. This CPU is actually an Intel Celeron 366MHz chip, released on the 4th of January 1999 for around $131 US. This CPU has been running overclocked by a hefty 134MHz, which is a 36.6% performance increase for its entire life. It can safely be said, based on my experience of this system, that it is a rock-solid platform for the Socket 370 CPUs, and I would highly recommend for a retro build. With that being said, the only disadvantage to this neat and compact board is the lack of an AGP slot, but if you can live with a PCI alternative, then that shouldn't be a problem. Lacking an AGP slot was the reason I parted with the Celerbanger to build my own system that did. The board has 3 PCI slots, 1 audio modem riser slot or AMR slot, 2 Ultra DMA 33/66 Busmaster ID ports on board, and 1 floppy disk controller. There are 2 SD-RAM DIMM slots with a maximum of 256MB SD-RAM modules per slot. The board supports 66 and 100MHz FSB Socket 370 processors and has an Intel 810AGPSet and AC97 audio. And a quick inspection of the caps, and all of them appear to feel okay, none of them are bulged, which is a positive sign. There is also a TV/DFP TV out digital flat panel daughter card connector, which is an optional extra. Okay then, let's build ourselves a little desk rig, and check to see if this motherboard is still operational. .64MB of SD-RAM is what was running in this machine when it was last operational, so that is what we'll be testing it with. This is a 133MHz module, but it will run quite comfortably at either 66 or 100MHz, but with reduced performance. this is the moment I've been waiting for, to see if there's still some life in the old girl yet. Dead. Totally dead. No signs of life. Well, that is a little bit unfortunate. After doing a little investigating, I came across a post on Reddit that mentioned a dead BIOS battery can cause a PC not to turn on. I have never come across this issue before, but it's always best to give the simple things a try first, before moving on to diagnosing other potential repairs. So we'll replace the old CR2032 battery with a nice new Sony one. The most common cause for a motherboard not to post is improperly installed components, but I seriously doubt that was going to be the case. My second thought was maybe an issue with my PSU, but I had tried several, with exactly the same result. I would be awfully surprised if a dead CMOS battery was all that had been preventing this motherboard from posting, but we will soon find out. Fingers crossed for the big moment.
Oh my god, it lives! It lives! There we go. What's that saying? It's clocked at 366.
That is the first time that I've come across a dead CMOS battery preventing a system from posting. The VGA connector still appears to be a problem, so that's going to need another looking at.
Cable must be dodgy.
Let's switch her off now and hook up a drive for a Dosbench, just to check that all is working as intended. The CPU is clocked at the stock speed of 366 MHz, and that is because the CMOS battery has died, reset to default settings, and all previous save settings have now been lost. The first series of benchmarks will do at the stock speed of 366 MHz, and we'll look at overclocking and comparing the difference. PC player in 640x480 scores 26.9 frames per second. The Doom time demo timed 2,134 game ticks in 1,247 real ticks, which is approximately 59.9 frames per second. The QuickTime demo results are 969 frames in 15.7 seconds at 61.8 frames per second. In SpeedSys, the processor is showing correctly as an Intel Celeron 366MHz, with the codename Mendocino, a 32K level 1 cache, and a 128K level 2 cache. Speed via the timestamp counter, or TSC, is 367.49 MHz. External clock speed of 66.82 MHz, which is multiplied by 5.5. Memory is SD-RAM PC133, showing 63 MB of RAM, as the integrated graphics will be using 1 meg of that memory. The memory bandwidth of 448.52 MB per second, which is pretty fast if you ask me, nearly half a gig per second. That's not bad for an old girl. Video is an Intel 810 chipset, graphics controller with 124 KB of memory, and with a memory bandwidth of 16,821 KB per second. The chipset is the Intel 810 Whitney chipset. BIOS is an Award Modular BIOS version 6.00 PG, released on the 22nd of the 10th, 2001. OS version MS-DOS version 6.22. So on to the results now. The processor benchmark score is 420.78, which is around where it should be. The memory timing results are as follows. The 16K data cache level 1 transfers at 1,398.35 MB per second. The data cache level 2 transfers at 754.37 MB per second. The memory throughput is 247.17 MB per second. And that concludes the results from the 366MHz benchmarks. Let's now reboot and attempt to overclock the CPU back to its former operating speed of 500 MHz. It is quite revealing how companies attempted to cut their costs in their pre-builds, with the Intel Celeron 366MHz CPU having an introduction price of around $131 in January 1999, and the Intel Celeron 500Mhz CPU having an introduction price of around $167 in August 1999, there would be the potential to cut the cost by $36. This may not sound like much, but in the competitive market of computing, every dollar counts. Under the frequency/voltage options in the BIOS, we can alter the host CPU, DIMM and PCI clock speeds. If the system dislikes the configuration, on reboot the system will not post, which then involves resetting the CMOS. After a fair bit of faffing, reboots and resets of the CMOS battery, the fastest I could manage to get the CPU to clock at is 413 MHz. Even that is a 47 MHz overclock, which is around a 12.9% boost from the base clock speeds. To put this into some kind of context, Back in the days when I was running an Intel Pentium 100MHz CPU, I couldn't manage to ever get it running stable overclocked at 133MHz or 120MHz. Granted, at the time, a 20 to 33% increase in clock speeds would have been a substantial boost. This CPU has been running clocked at 500MHz completely stable throughout its entire lifetime, which is an increase of 36.6% on the base clock speed. Onto the results from PC Player now in our overclocked state, and we're now getting 30.3 frames per second, 3.4 frames per second more than the stock benchmarks, and reflects the 12.9% increase in the clock speeds with a 12.9% boost in frame rate. Doom's overclocked benchmark results timed 2,134 game ticks in 1,117 real ticks, which is approximately 66.9 frames per second, up from 59.9 in the stock benchmark. Quake's overclocked benchmark results are 969 frames in 14 seconds at 69.3 frames per second, which is up from 61.8 in the stock benchmark. And finally onto SpeedSys, which will give us a more comprehensive look at where we're seeing the performance benefits and whether it's all down to them extra CPU clock cycles we are squeezing out of it. The processor is still showing correctly as an Intel Celeron 366MHz. Speed via the timestamp counter TSC is now 412.49 MHz, and the external clock speed is now 75 MHz, multiplied by 5.5. Memory bandwidth has increased to 516.88 MB per second, up from 448.82 MB per second, an approximate increase of 15.2%. Video memory bandwidth is also much faster, 18,882 KB a second, up from 16,821 KB per second. The processor benchmark score is 472.28, an increase of 51.5 points, a couple of notches above the Pentium 2 400MHz. The memory timing results are as follows. The 16KB data cache level 1 transfers 1,569.49 MB per second. The 128KB data cache level 2 transfers at 846.63 MB per second, and the memory throughput is 280.94 MB per second. All of the transfer speeds are significantly faster than the stock speeds, and I'm really pleased with the results, albeit not at the clock speeds that I was aiming for. I think I'll need to revisit this board and spend a little more time figuring out the correct settings, but until then, thanks for joining me on this nostalgic journey into some of my past hardware, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Take care, guys.